G'day and welcome to Redriven. Now, in the few months that Redriven has existed, the fourth generation Mitsubishi Pajero, is the most requested car that we've had on the channel. But before we get into this, I need to thank everybody that helped us with this review. We reached out to Pajero owners groups, 4x4 technicians and specialists, Pajero forums, Pajero owners and just Pajero fans in general. And this video is basically the culmination of all their expertise. But the thing is, of all the people we spoke to, they're all Pajero fans. And the thing with fans can be quite biased at times. So are they right? Are these actually any good? Especially now that these are a few years old and have many thousands of kilometers on them. What do they like to live with every day? What goes wrong with them? What do they cost to own and operate? And most importantly, should you buy one? Let's find out. Now, before we get deep into this Pajero, I should mention that depending on where you're watching this from, this might be called a Montero or a Shogun. And a quick fun fact about the word Pajero, Pajero in Spanish loosely translates to the word wanker. So it seems oddly appropriate that I, with my love of small pretentious coffees and vintage Japanese watches, is reviewing this car. It's basically like you get to watch two wankers in the one video, which kind of reminds me of some other videos I've seen. Anyway, I should also mention that in this video we will be focusing on the Australian variants of the Pajero. But if you're not from Australia, don't freak out, don't panic, because everything we're going to be going over should relate to Pajeros, Monteros and Shoguns in your local market. Now, the fourth generation Pajero has been with us since 2006 and it was only just discontinued earlier this year. But even within the fourth generation Pajero, there were four sub-models or three updates, four separate Pajeros within the fourth generation Pajero. Make sense? Yeah. It all kicked off with the NS series, which in itself was a revised version of the third generation Pajero. And look, that's no bad thing, as the Pajero has been a highly acclaimed vehicle from its inception way back in 1982. 2009 saw the introduction of the NT, 2012 brought the NW, and finally the NX appeared in 2015, with each sub-generation receiving various mechanical and equipment updates. However, no matter what the update, the Pajero's fundamentals stayed the same. Unlike the ladder frame chassis used by a lot of the competition, the Pajero uses a monocoque chassis with Mitsubishi's RISE technology, which basically increases the torsional rigidity and improves cabin strength when compared to other vehicles in this class. Also, speaking of differences to some of the other vehicles in this class, the Pajero features front and rear independent suspension and Mitsubishi's highly acclaimed Super Select 2 four-wheel drive system, look, both of which we will cover in more detail shortly. The Pajero is also available as a very funky short wheelbase 3-door, as well as this, the long wheelbase 5-door variant, with all but a few models seating 7. And depending on the year, with a choice of petrol or diesel power plants, and due to this generation Pajero being with us for 15 years, it has been available in a host of various trim levels. So while we would love to go into every graphic detail of every variant and update in this video, we can't, because it would just take way too long. But the thing is, we have grabbed all that information and we've put it in our handy Redriven cheat sheets. Our cheat sheets are invaluable as they provide a full breakdown of the car's model range, its common problems, what you need to look out for before handing over your hard-earned cash, how much of that cash you should be handing over, and so much more. Check it out at redriven.com or in the link below. Now look, obviously we try to go over as much as we can on the Pajero, but the thing is, we generally find it's those that own Pajeros that are the true Pajero experts. So if you own a Pajero or you are a Pajero expert and you've noticed that we've missed something in this video, please let us know in the comments below. So does it look good? Well, look, obviously looks are subjective, but for me, I think these still look great. Like, they're getting long in the tooth, but it's still a really attractive vehicle. I love the short wheelbase version of these. I think they look so cool. Visually, like, clearly this is not a soft roader, but it's still, I feel like it still looks quite classy and refined. And like, it is a big lug of a unit, but it seems to hide its size quite well. It doesn't look like big and intimidating. Like, overall, I feel like the Pajero nails this balance between kind of the fancy schmancy stuff like the Land Rover Discovery 4 and the more rugged stuff like a Nissan Patrol or even kind of Jeep Wrangler. Just balances it well. Now, the last visual update happened back in 2015, but right across the four sub-generations, the actual sheet metal never changed. So you have to be a bit of a kind of Pajero anorak to spot the difference. But now that these things have been around for quite a few years, there are quite a few common problems and issues that you need to watch out for, and we'll be covering those shortly. How's the interior? Well, look, in design terms, it is aging, but I still feel like it nails that balance between like fancy schmancy and tough and rugged. Like, it's clearly not luxurious in here, but it's not utilitarian either. Now, across the 4 generations and I know thousands of different trim levels, the overall design didn't change, but the quality of materials did. This is a base model GLX and everything feels fine. Like there's an okay amount of squidge, there's some hard plastics, but depending on trim level and year, it might be better than this, but it also might be worse than this. Some even have that kind of 70s porn movie kind of dodgy wood grain dash finish as well. That's interesting. Now, as far as wear and tear goes after 6 years and thousands of kilometers, it's not too bad in here. Like the leather on the steering wheel is getting a little bit shiny. Any of the painted surfaces, the paint's either peeling off or scratching off. The piano black plastic, like all piano black plastic, is scratched to pieces there. But besides that, like the seats are wearing quite well. All of the areas here, all the touch points, it's fine, it's good. Now I'm 3.6 Egyptian cubits tall. This is in my driving position and I have oodles of space, heaps of foot room, heaps of knee room, heaps of headroom. Because the shoulder line of the car is quite low, it feels quite airy and spacious in here because it's got quite a large glass house. Although the seating position is interesting because the floor is quite high, my knees are quite raised, so on a long trip I might lose kind of any feeling to my feet. But to counteract that, the seats are incredibly angle adjustable, both forward and completely back. Now, as far as wear and tear goes, this car is used for this gentleman's work car. This back seat is used regularly. He also has a couple of dogs that sit back here. And wear and tear is great. The fabric feels fine, the plastics feel fine. Again, like the front, you know, there's a bit of paint coming off the silver bits of painted here. But yeah, overall, a bit of some scratchy plastic that has some few marks on it, but not too bad. Now, obviously Pajeros are generally a 7-seater, but the gentleman that owns this has removed the third row of seats because it's his work vehicle and he needs to put a whole bunch of stuff back there. But if you're an adult, just know that you don't want to sit in that third row. How's the tech? Well, look, like the interior, the level and quality of tech will vary depending on year model and trim model. So some of the tech is actually quite good. Some of the other tech is actually a bit shit. But for an overview of what these cars have in terms of tech, here's me doing a voiceover rapidly. Early base model Pajeros only came with power steering, electric windows, electric mirrors, air conditioning, central locking, AM and FM radio, a CD player and cruise control. But later high-spec variants may be equipped with climate control air conditioning, a 7-inch touchscreen with reverse camera, smartphone mirroring, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, plus potentially a 12-speaker premium Rockford Fosgate audio system. The Pajero also has this awesome little digital display that'll show everything from, you know, average fuel economy, elevation, outside temperature. But my most favourite thing that it shows, the most favourite display, is barometric pressure. And I don't know about you, but I love barometric pressure because it's measured in hectopascals. And if I was to ever have a son, I'm going to name him Hector Pascal. Anyway, many Pajeros are fitted with a wide range of aftermarket accessories, and it's critical to make sure that these accessories are high quality and are fitted properly and actually work. So if the Pajero you're looking at has, say, driving lights or a winch or an aftermarket infotainment system, press all the buttons and make sure everything works. You'd be amazed at how many people buy a car like this without testing all the buttons and accessories, only to find out after they've bought it that something like the light bar doesn't work. So, is it practical? Well, with the third row either removed or hidden away, yes, it is enormously practical back here. With the third row in place, it's nowhere near as practical. Speaking of that third row as well, like this owner's actually removed the third row completely. On higher spec models, the third row hides away, but to unfold it from the hideaway position and into a normal spot and then back again, it's kind of like you're putting together the most complex piece of Lego in the world. It's a nightmare of a job. So this owner, removing it, that's the way to go. Now, as well as the boot being enormously huge, there are some little token storage areas, like just here where the owner of this car has decided to store his valuable rare dust. In the third row, there's 2 cup holders and a 12-volt power outlet. Practicality in the back isn't too bad. You've got some mat pockets behind the seats here. You've got an armrest here with a cup holder. But the thing with this cup holder is if you've got like a finger that you don't like and you want to guillotine it off, just pop it in there and off the finger goes. Also, the cup holders have these funky little adjustable little tabs. So if you're like me and you're a wanker and you like pretentious small coffees, it should hold an espresso or a piccolo in there easily. And practicality up front, you've got door bins, although you need to have like paper thin arms to get to it once the door is closed. I don't have paper thin arms. There's also storage in here. What you think is storage, but it's actually a power outlet there. Great spot for a Mars bar here, right next to your cup holders. That seems appropriate. There's some storage here and a great sized center bin. Really good sized glove box, but it's also got a spot for your phone just here because the USB charging point is right next to it. So you can put your phone in there, hide it away so you don't text while driving because that's bloody dangerous. Now look, we'll get into the mechanical stuff with these in a second, but let's start with the exterior. If you suspect that the Pajero you're looking at has seen any off-roading adventures, make sure you check the door skins, the door sills, and all the bumper corners for any signs of damage or abuse. Also, make sure you check underneath and look for the bash plates or any of the protection metal underneath to make sure it hasn't been pushed up into the engine or along the transmission. If you see any signs of abuse underneath, yeah, walk away. Next up, it is critical to check for rust. Check under all of the rubbers. Also, have a look around the doors, around and on the roof, and around the rear wheel arches. Also, if you're in an area with salted roads, check underneath for rust and check the fuel tank, as there are heaps of reports of rust damaging that. And like any used car, look for any signs of accident damage or dodgy repair work. Like look at all the panel gaps across the car. Do they all match up? Is the paint consistent both in texture and color? And look for signs of overspray. So pop the bonnet, look around the engine, any overspray there. Get in, look at the wheel arches under the car. If there's overspray or dodgy repair work, walk away. And finally, on the exterior, make sure you check all the door handles. How do they work? Do the doors open and close properly? Again, check all the accessories, look at the quality of them, how they're fitted. And look, because it's an off-roader, they're potentially more susceptible to more abuse. So yeah, check the exterior thoroughly. Okay, interior gremlins. First up, there are loads of reports of the air conditioning failing. The problem is, it can be a really big job to fix, sometimes requiring the entire dashboard to be taken out of the car. That will take hours, therefore costing a small fortune. Secondly, even though this car's interior is in really good condition, there are heaps of reports of the driver's side bolster here ripping and kind of failing, like getting too squishy. It rips especially on the leather models. It's not a hard fix, it's just annoying. Speaking of leather, if the Pajero you're looking at has a leather interior, if it hasn't been conditioned properly, the leather can get pretty gross. What goes wrong mechanically? Well, here's Jim.
We often joke in the workshop and we ask, what's wrong with Pajeros? There's got to be something wrong with them because they're heaps cheaper than their competitors, right? Well, no, wrong. They're actually super reliable. They're not mechanically perfect, but they're pretty bloody good. Probably the worst, most common problem is timing chain failure. The 4M41s are known for that. However, that can actually be avoided by replacing the top section of timing chain guide at about 90,000 Ks. It's quite easy to do, and you can do it while you're in there doing the valve clearances, which you're supposed to do every 30,000 Ks, and a lot of workshops kind of don't do it, but mainly because most customers don't like spending the 2 or 3 hours labour plus parts to get it done. So my tip is don't be a tight ass, pay the money and get it done. Other than that, we do see the occasional EGR problem, some injector seal problems occasionally, but the likelihood of that is actually much less than a lot of other diesels in its class. We do see a few DPF issues, but typically it's more related to when they have not been serviced properly or had the wrong oil in it or have another underlying problem that's caused the DPF fault. Also, I have heard of some transmission failures in the autos when people are pulling it from drive into reverse while they're still moving, and that can totally destroy the gearbox, so you might want to avoid that. My advice, if you want it to last, get the services done every 10,000 Ks instead of every 15, and change the fuel filter every second service. Oh, and fit a catch can, very important.
Is it safe? Well, look, unfortunately, Pajeros were caught up in the Takata airbag scandal. So if you are looking at one of these, just make sure that that Takata airbag has been recalled and repaired and all that sort of stuff. But for how safe these are across the range, again, here's me doing a voiceover. While all Pajeros come with active stability and traction control, electronic brake force distribution, multiple airbags and the 4th generation Pajero's strengthened body shell, the NS and NT generation only received a 4-star ANCAP safety rating, and even that was from way back in 2011, meaning that compared to modern cars, it does lack in safety credentials. However, the NW and NX received 5 stars in 2013, thanks to extra build integrity features surrounding the driver and passenger's knee and leg protection. But forget any sort of modern safety technology like autonomous emergency braking or lane keep assist, even on the most recent models. So what's it like to drive? Well, look, before we get to the driving impressions, there's just a couple of little technical things that we need to cover first. The Super Select 2 system is superb. It allows you to drive in 4x4 high range on a sealed surface all the time, no matter what the conditions, which many part-time 4x4 systems just don't allow. Plus you can select and deselect between rear-wheel drive high range and four-wheel drive high range at speeds up to 100 kilometers an hour. Actually, many of the Pajero experts we spoke to recommend driving these in 4x4 high range all the time, just for that extra all-wheel drive peace of mind. However, If you need to accelerate like out of a driveway or an intersection really quickly and you're on a very loose or wet surface, just be aware that the traction control kicks in really hard, so you're not going to be making any forward progress very quickly at all. Speaking of going quickly, look, this is clearly not a performance SUV, but in the time I've had it driving around metropolitan areas, on the freeway and out on these country roads, it's never felt like embarrassingly underpowered at all. Okay, there is just a little bit of turbo lag, but besides that, power delivery is really smooth, and because it's a diesel, there's loads of torque, so accelerating from 70k an hour, yeah, nice, it gets up in boogies. Now, how has the transmission handled many years and many thousands of kilometers? Look, it's good, it's really smooth, but there have been a couple of occasions where it feels a bit lost for a gear, or there's just that slight hesitation. It's a little bit disappointing. Not bad, but just a bit, you can feel its age. Now the steering is really light, which, look, it helps around town or like on a tight off-road track. It actually kind of helps hide the overall size and bulk of this car, but out on country roads or even on the freeway, yeah, it's just a bit vague. It does manage to hide its size really well. Like this is, it's a big lug of a thing, but it never feels too intimidatingly large. Like it definitely doesn't feel as small as like a Toyota Yaris, but even if you're reverse parking in the middle of a city, it's not intimidating at all. Now, even when new, the Pajero was kind of criticised for its lack of ride quality, even though it's on independent front and rear suspension. And after many years and thousands of kilometres, how has it impacted the suspension? Well, I hate to say, but it's potentially worse. Like you tend to feel like through there, you tend to feel like every little bump and pothole and ridge in the road, and it sends a bit of a shudder and shake through the entire cabin. Look, it does calm down once you're out on the freeway, but around town and out on these country roads, like there, it just feels overly busy all the time. However, that can be easily remedied with a quality aftermarket setup. Oddly, even though the ride quality is a bit shit, it actually handles really well. Like it doesn't pitch and roll too much for such a big lug of a vehicle. It's not a sports car, but it handles well until you hit a pothole and then all the positives go flying out the window. Now, if you're actually in the market for one of these, take it for a test drive and listen for any weird noises. Like this thing has got a few rattles and there's a little bit of wind noise, but that's to be expected for the age of this car and how old this car is in general. But listen especially for any weird mechanical noises or any vibrations through the seat. It just should feel smooth all the time. Also, make sure you give it the beans in a straight line and see if there's like any dodgy black smoke or any coloured smoke coming out of the exhaust. Now look, due to the Pajero having independent suspension and a monocoque chassis, many people discredit these for not having enough off-roading chops, but look, honestly, they're wrong. Okay, look, there are other 4x4s we would recommend if your main hobby is serious rock crawling or if you spend your days searching out the absolute hardest line, but for the majority of us, for most of the off-roading we do, this thing will easily tackle anything you throw at it. Pricing here in Australia kicks off from around about $8,000, although an $8,000 Pajero will have stacks of kilometres on it and it will be in interesting condition. At the other end of the spectrum, you're looking at around about $70,000 for a really recent top spec, low kilometre Pajero in obviously mint condition. Something like this, a 2015 GLX in pretty good condition with under 100,000 Ks on it, going to be looking around about $40,000. But here's a fun fact, Pajeros have one of the highest customer retention rates of any car. Generally, those that sell a Pajero just go on to buy a newer Pajero, and that's a really good sign. And for pricing in other parts of the world, excluding the US, because you guys never received this generation, here's a graphic because I'm terrible at remembering numbers. Mitsubishi have a claimed fuel consumption figure of anywhere between 8.4 and 13.7 litres per 100 kilometres, depending on if it's a diesel or a petrol, 3-door or 5-door, trim level, all that sort of stuff. This particular Pajero has a claimed fuel consumption figure of 9 litres per 100 Ks, but on this test, we're seeing figures bang on 10. Mitsubishi offered a 5-year, 100,000 kilometre warranty on all new Pajeros. However, as of October 2020, you could get that extended to 10 years and 200,000 kilometres, although the Pajero has to be purchased new and serviced from new at Mitsubishi dealerships. Servicing is recommended at every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres, and Mitsubishi have an excellent cap price servicing plan. Also, as we've found out in the last few weeks of researching these things have a phenomenal fan base and really great owners groups. So if you are buying one, make sure you join one of the owners groups because the support and advice that those guys can give is excellent. So should you buy one? Yes. Oh, you want me to elaborate? Sure. Look, okay, yes, there are 4x4 wagons that will tackle tougher terrain, and yes, there are 4x4 wagons that are more comfortable and luxurious, but there are very few, if any, 4x4 wagons that can match the Pajero's wide-ranging jack-of-all-trades abilities while still offering the same excellent value for money and the same mechanical reliability and longevity. Look, obviously there are thrashed and heavily abused Pajeros out there that need to be avoided at all costs, and look, it does tick a lot of boxes, but don't get us wrong, it's not completely perfect, but for what it does, for what it costs and what it offers, it's bloody great. We feel that the sweet spot of the range is a 2015 to 2017 NX in the GLS trim spec, as it will give you everything you need with none of the pesky potential DPF issues. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and hey, what did you think of the Pajero? Let us know in the comments below, and after the video, can you please hit those like, subscribe and bell icon buttons, and go and check us out on the socials. See you next time. All of the Pajero experts that we spoke to regarding this car, before we, wow, my brain's gone bananas. Are they reliable? What do they like to live with every day? Pajero in other markets is known as the Shogun on, whoa. Now the 4th gen, whoa, okay, 2006, and it was only just this, slow down, I'm going way too fast. There we go. So while we, now look, obviously I've gone totally, I've got it, here we go. Mitsubishi offered a 5-year, 100,000 kilometre warranty on all new Pajeros. However, Pajeros, there we go. But forget any kind of modern safety technology like autonomous, but forget any sort of modern safety technology like autonomous, oh man, okay. Even on the top spec, even on late model Pajeros, not hard, Sam.